Good morning. You're watching, you know what time it is. It's time this morning for Wake the Hell Up. I'm Leron Atkinson, here to give you this morning's message. If you're watching us by YouTube Live, if you're watching by replay via another form of app, social media app, if you're listening to us by way of podcast, thank you and good morning. We are getting ready to wake the hell up. This is, for many of you that are watching, it is Pentecost Sunday. It's a day where they're celebrating, and I may talk about it a little bit later. They're actually celebrating the day where many different languages fell on folks to talk in the earth because God had to teach people a divine language and to teach you how to talk to other folks in languages and ways so that you can be more effective communicators. That's really basically how I summarize it. Really is, in jest about just the short version. I want you to be able to communicate to people, to be able to talk to people from different walks of life, different spaces, different understandings. And the reality is sometimes you just can't do that when all you know is your way, all you know is your language, all you know is your culture, all you know is your style, all you know is your flavor, all you know is your slang, all you have is your interpretation, all you have is your understanding. And so he drops language on people so that they're able to not only articulate and understand each other, but also so that numbers can be built and so that evangelism can take place. People need to know. But they can't know if you can't talk, if you can't speak, if you can't communicate, and if you're not fluent, if you're broken up in it. So he drops languages on people because he understands that people need to understand people in order for a message to be made clear. So that's pretty much in just what all of that's about. We'll talk about that later. Those are just the base clip notes. I'm going to talk about Samuel and Eli. I'm reading from 1 Samuel chapter 3. I'm going to read that to you guys in brief. You guys actually can go back, read it, research it in your leisure. If I read it, it's going to eat away at the time. And I really want to make these broadcasts and these moments together brief but impacting so that when you listen to it, when you share it, people can get the meat of the message without me doing a whole bunch of rambling, which I can do. I'm a preacher. It happens. Anywho, 1 Samuel chapter 3, it really talks about the calling is what I'm going to really focus on, the calling of Samuel. And I want to tie in how that has to do with you. If you're just coming in, if you're just watching, thank you guys for sharing. Thank you all for sending this to your people. Even if you're not just sharing on YouTube, you can take the same link. You can send it to your friends in their inboxes, to their text messages, whatever you need to do. And you can just send them information, put hashtag and you're welcome in search bar. They'll be able to find us. If they're not able to do that, then they can hit that subscribe button. This is our Sunday morning edition, so we are here talking about what we talk about on Sunday mornings. 1 Samuel says this, and we're going to go really fast. So for all of you that need something to talk about, need a little more information, these Sunday mornings are going to be great for your study time, etc., because the work in many ways is already done for you. 1 Samuel chapter 3. If you don't have it on your screens, etc., we'll do that soon after y'all start giving. We can make it all really big, so make that really huge. 1 Samuel chapter 3, it says, and the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days. One of your translations may say that the word of the Lord was rare. Now, 1 Samuel chapter 3, how this becomes important in talking about how the word of the Lord was rare. We're living in that same time now. The word of the Lord is rare. It didn't say preachers are rare. It didn't say churches are rare. It didn't say sanctuaries, fellowships, denominations, or congregations, but the word of the Lord is rare. Now, the difference in the word of the Lord being separate and apart from the work of the Lord, you can do the work of the Lord without necessarily having the word of the Lord. And we see many of that in many occasions today in many worship experiences, that the work is going on, but you can do the work of God without doing it with God. And so when he talks about the word of the Lord being precious or rare, the reason that it's precious is because you so seldom hear the word of the Lord, even though you see many churches, you see many persons proclaiming that they're working for him. When you hear the word of the Lord, it is actually rare. It's precious. So when you get it, you must treat it with regard, hold it in esteem, because it's so rare. When you have someone that gives you the word of God, you must esteem them. You must honor them. Verse given honor. You give them honor because you're hearing something that's not just going to change the trajectory or the course of how you do things and how you interact, but it changes the trajectory. It changes your soul. It affects your soul. It affects your momentum, your mobility, your engagement, your action, how you think. This is what the word of the Lord does. It changes you from the inside out. It doesn't just give you a picture on the outside and say, this is who you are. But the precious word of the Lord, or the rare word of the Lord, it has its effect. It takes root inside of you. So he's talking about the rare word of the Lord, which is really important to establish and qualify in chapter 3, because there's so many other tones that happen within the course of 1 Samuel chapter 3 and just throughout, particularly the earlier parts of Samuel's life, that he does have to qualify to him that what's on him is rare. And for those of you that are watching, one of the things and one of the fights and hugest battles that you're going to have to deal with is really coming into grips with the reality that what is on you is rare. It's not something that you find every day. It's not something you experience every day. That what is on you is rare. And you have to be willing and bold enough to be rare. You'll be rare on Monday, rare on Tuesday, rare on Wednesday, rare on Thursday. You're a rarity. When you're a rarity, there has to be greater regard taken in order to house or to keep you, and even for you to find your other tribe, your other crew, because things that are rare are not out and about. Here's another issue with this text. Samuel is coming in. He's the first of the prophets, and this movement is now coming in. And so the prophetic at this moment, although there have been prophetic times and moments heretofore, now things are becoming more official. So the prophetic and this thing is really inconspicuous at this moment. For those of you that are writing, I want you to hashtag inconspicuous, right? So not only is what is in him rare, but his particular role is an inconspicuous role. It's a growing role. So this role is growing. As it's developing and as it's growing, it presents another challenge. Not only is what is on you rare, but it is growing. And so for those that may not understand what's on you and then don't understand you're growing, you have a whole nother dynamic. Is that before you're grown, as you're growing, as you're coming, you have to be subject to rejection, abandonment, being dismissed because you're growing. People tend to not want you until you're grown. When you're grown, they want to know you. When you're rich, they want to give. But it's the times when you're growing, you're developing. So 1 Samuel chapter 3, it talks about this rare word, and then it goes into talking about Eli. It says that it came to pass at that time, at what time? At the same time the word of the Lord was rare. So verse 2 says, it comes to pass at that time when Eli was laid down in his place and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see. So his vision is leaving because he's older. Right around the time of this text, he's approximately about 100 years old. So it's talking about his inability to see the way that he saw before. So here we have verse 1 is already established. And I know some of y'all can take this and preach this and but here's some content. Verse 1, it talks about the rarity. Verse 2, it talks about the person in standing position, a standing leadership, Eli. He is unable to see. His eyes are dim. So verse 3, it says, the lamp of God goes out in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep. So in verse 1, rarity. Verse 2, it talks about Eli going to sleep. He's getting sleepy. He's tired. His eyes are going out. It's talking about his eyesight, not his vision, just eyesight. Verse 3, he talks about how the lamp of God, now this lamp of God or this fire, it's supposed to be going on throughout the temple. So everybody mad at my little flames back here, all right? There should always be a fire burning, all right? There should always be some sort of fire. The fire is for revelation. So the set leader has eye problems. Now the lamp in the temple, the lamp has gone out, which means not only is there no light in the person that has the light, or it's a light carrier, but now the temple is starting to become dim. So people are challenged being able to get the revelation that they used to get or that they once got. They cannot see as clear. They can't hear clear. So there's a certain type of darkness. There's a certain environment that is set here that is void of light. We don't have the ability to see. And now a light that was supposed to continually be there, and this is not Pepco or whatever your electricity company may be. This is natural light. This is fire. What this means is someone hasn't got oil, they haven't gotten the wood, and they haven't done their due diligence to make sure that someone that is coming into the temple should always be able to get a revelation about life, revelation about relationship, revelation about God, revelation about themselves. But what do you do when you go to the temple, when you go to worship, and there's no revelation? This is why many times people are saying, I'm not going, I'm not wasting my time. There's no wind, there's no fire, and heck, it's not even halfway any good eye candy. There has to be something for you to come to, something for you to enjoy, to involve yourself in, to be a part of. And when there's nothing that is moving you, not only do they not have light, but it was also provision. It also provided heat, warmth, comfort. When I tell you to wake the hell up, there are things within you that need to wake the hell up. Put the fire back in the temple. Put the fire back in your conversation, back in your tones, back in your respect for yourself, back in your standards. And so this is what is happening. Chapter 4. When Samuel's asleep in chapter verse 3, he runs to Eli in verse 4. He runs to Eli and he says, "Here am I." Watch this. He ran up to Eli and said, "Here am I, for you called me." And he said, "I called not. Lie down again." And he went to lay down. So Samuel initially goes running to Eli. So this tells us two things. Number one, when he's laying down, he's asleep, he hears this voice. It tells us that there's nothing wrong with Samuel's ears. And I tell a few of you all that are watching, there is nothing wrong with your ears. Many times, there are those that will make you feel as if you've missed God or that you can't hear. There's nothing wrong with your ears. Nothing wrong with your hearing. If you guys hashtag I can hear, all right? Thank you all for the fire emojis. I see you going in here waking the hell up. Thank you for your texting, your typing. I'm going to read your comments later and respond. And also, if you're watching, make sure this evening that you go on Facebook Live. We are going to be doing our recap. I want to hear what some of you have gotten out of the message. So keep your wigs on, keep your eyebrows on, your makeup done. We're going to do a Facebook Live recap. If you're not following me there, it's Leron, last name, Atkinson. So for all of you that are watching this morning, you get to jump over on Facebook, meet me there, and we get to have a live recap. You have a song you want to sing, whatever it is, I'm going to allow you guys to come on Facebook, come live with me, and tell me what you got out of the message on Wake the Hell Up. So verse 4, he goes to him. The second thing you recognize in that verse is that Eli, or that Samuel, when he hears the voice of God, he runs to his leader. So the voice of God sounds to Samuel like the voice of his leader. Right? I'm going to say that again. The voice of God sounds to Samuel like the voice of Eli, who was his leader. So the voice of God had an attachment. It was recognizable. It sounded like what he heard. The voice of God doesn't sound like what you have never heard, what you've never experienced. So if in cadence, in tone, in poise, there was some remnants of it that made him say, the only other person in this house with me right now is Eli. So no, he runs to Eli, and then it says, he said, "You called me." Eli tells him, "I didn't call you, go and lay down again." Second time, the Lord speaks to Samuel again. Samuel rises, goes to Eli and said, "Here am I, for you did call me." And he answered, "I called not. My son, go lay down again." Now here's a beautiful part in the text that many will overlook. I choose not to. Eli and Samuel both had separate rooms. So before you start hearing him addressing even his son in this verse, you see that they were not sleeping together in the same space. And so this is an area that definitely does need to be touched and tackled, because in so many cultures now, the relationship between a spiritual father, spiritual son, spiritual mother, spiritual daughter, spiritual mother, spiritual son, spiritual father, spiritual daughter, so many times those things can be compromised to the point where folks don't even have separate rooms. And so to even be able to hear God from your room, to make a trail, to make a distance, to go right back down where you should have been, down to Eli, and Eli says, "Now you go back to your room. I know you can hear like I can hear, but I want to make sure that we're clear and that the lines of communication are where these lines of communication needs to be." But many times people will talk about Eli as if Eli was in a bad position or that he was a poor leader because Eli was in his bed resting. That's what you're supposed to do. Last night, after your Saturday, time the call comes, it's highly possible to be working in the church that you're in, that you can hear God and that you can know who he is while you are in your process of learning and developing. Let's go forward. Samuel didn't know the Lord. Now there was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. So he did not know the Lord. He also didn't know the word of the Lord to hear God. So verse of the Lord. Maybe they heard it from someone that did know. Maybe they got an interpretation, some sort of a revelation, heard something, but don't know exactly what it is that they hear. So this really does speak to the process of hearing. You don't just develop hearing overnight and just become sharp. You're not just able to see, hear, or know overnight. It is something that's developmental. It is progressive. Someone hashtag progressive. Verse 8, "And the Lord said to Samuel, called to Samuel again the third time." This is 3 times. "He arose and went to Eli and said, 'Here am I, for you did call me.' And Eli perceived that he had called the child." Eli was tired. Now, I don't believe that when I hear Eli talked about, and they talk a lot of times about Sometimes these spiritual fathers or parents, they're old and they just refuse to get out of seats. I want to challenge your thinking and your thought process. Many times they actually want to leave. They want to move on. And I have to deal with Eli a little bit later, even in his relationship with his sons, Hophni and Phinehas. Scripture calls them the priests of the Lord, that they were wicked, they were evil. The Bible says that when the women workers were coming in, the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, they were sleeping with the women in the temple, particularly the workers. And so when the folks were coming to church for worship, they would stop them before they even got into the sanctuary, grab a hold of them, do what they wanted to do, and proceed on with service. And so this was a very common thing that was taking place because the people did want to come for worship. But when they came for worship, there were other things taught to them and presented to them so that the people that were coming for God, Hophni and Phinehas, make sure they got their piece off first. The other thing that they did was greatly offensive was when it was time to sacrifice. You had those who were coming to sacrifice for their sins, that were coming to sacrifice for their family, coming to sacrifice because there were expectations that they had for their years, for their times, their moments. And they knew that blessing was attached not only to repentance and sacrifice, but also to sowing and giving. And so when they would come bringing their sacrifices to be offered up, the priests were assigned to take a fork. They would have their assistant take a fork. And when the meat was boiled unto the Lord, after they had sacrificed, they would stick their fork in a pot of boiling water. And whatever that big fork pulled out, that was the priest, or that was the part that was supposed to go for the priest. And so what ends up happening is when the priests come into the temple and the people come in with their sacrifices, Hophni and Phinehas said, we don't want boiled meat. They wanted roast. They specifically wanted roast. They didn't like the taste or the flavor of the boil. They wanted roast. And this was highly offensive in that they had an assignment, and the meat and the sacrifice had an assignment towards them. So after they go ahead and take all this meat out, they take their portions out. The people were saying, no, this is not godly. I want to sacrifice to the Lord. That's why I came. So when they bring those sacrifices in, you got the priest now saying, I'm going to take your offering. I'm going to take your sacrifice. And they took their portions out. And then Eli has to talk to his sons and said, you're not offending the people, molesting and raping and contaminating the sanctuary. And now you're taking their offerings or their sacrifices, and you're taking not only of the meat, but they're taking of the fat part, the part specifically that God wanted and that was needed for their transgressions. You're now causing the people to transgress because the people are coming to church not able to get to God. And they thought that this was going to be a direct access point to that space. So now there are those who are saying, I'm not even going. And so you see a decline in those numbers because of what Hophni and Phinehas are doing. And Eli gets the penalty and saying, you're responsible, you're the priest. Eli was tired. It is possible to become tired of being accused of things that you didn't do, tired of being accused of things that you halfway did or things that you did do that maybe you did not do thoroughly. Tired of being accused of saying that you have control of people that you really don't have control over. I told them to stop. I gave them the word. They didn't listen. Tired of having his name attached to people whose names were attached to him. God called him, but they had to come with him. And so he had to become his helpers. And even though they helped him, they were also a huge hindrance to the success of what he was building. Some of you that are watching right now, you have a great vision, a great work, but the things and the ones that are attached to you, they don't have your principles, your values, your standards. And if you're not careful, they could tear down everything that God has called you to build up. So Hophni and Phinehas, he was tired of this. There was nothing he could do about it. They're going crazy in the temple. They're going crazy. And when Samuel hears God in Eli's house, I don't believe that Eli was upset and trying to hold on. I believe Eli was relieved that there was another substitute coming. Because after you've heard God, you've done the will of God, he's 98 years old. He has been the most popular preacher. He's been at everyone's revival, everyone's conference. He's been booked. He's been canceled. He's been dogged. He's been built. He's been torn down. And after you do it for a long time, you can get tired, just tired. Tired of having to be responsible. Tired of having to be an example. Tired of having to bite my tongue when I want to say exactly what I want to say, exactly the way I want to say it. And you're welcome. And he enjoys doing the work of the Lord, but at the same time, he realizes that his part, his space is over. It takes maturity to recognize and realize when your time and when your space is over. But it also takes maturity to recognize and acknowledge when it's not. When it's not over, you have a commitment and a responsibility to get back up, do it again, wake the hell up from wherever you were sleeping from, and do what it is that you're called to do. But Eli recognized that it was over. And when Samuel heard God in his house, right in that temple, he was really clear that God was relieving him. This is a relief. It's a relief when someone else can serve that actually hears God. Do you know how many leaders are in a position right now where they want to release, they want to get over it, they want to do something else, they're tired, but they can't be released because they don't want to give the job or the role to the next person who can't hear God, because it'll tear up what you built to set someone in a position that's going to tear down everything that you built. And some Eli's are waiting, they're watching. And now they're saying, I want to release it, but I need to release it to someone that hears God. I'm holding on not because I want to, but because I have to. There are no persons or parties that I'm aware of that can actually hear God. Eli heard him, but his time was closing. He knew it wasn't in his lineage. He knew it wasn't going to be something that was hereditary. He knew he couldn't pass it to his sons because his sons didn't have the mantle of the father. They didn't have the standards of their father. As a matter of fact, they didn't respect God. They disrespected God. They didn't respect God's people. They disrespected God's people. And so Eli was waiting on a replacement, and there was no one in sight. Samuel, who was under him, couldn't even hear God until verse 7. He hears God and he knows the voice of God. And so he makes sure, this is what Eli does. 3 different times he hears God's voice. Samuel hears it. Number 1, I need to make sure you hear him. Eli says, and I need to make sure that I'm hearing God, that you heard God. And so 3 times I'm sure that before I get ready to walk out, before I get ready to close the loop, seal all of my affairs and orders, God, you talked to him 3 times, spoke to me 3 times. I want to make sure that you're right about this boy. I want to leave you with this message on this wake the hell up moment. I want you to remember this. I want you to write it down. I want you to prepare for this, that you've been hearing silently. And some of you have not had someone to run to or a leader to run to and say, this is what I'm hearing. Is this right? Because if you're really hearing God, you should not be afraid to verify the authenticity and the accuracy of what you heard. And so he goes to Eli because what he does know is that even though Eli's house is tore up, and in certain ways he may be a public success and a private failure with his family, he knows, even though he may not always necessarily know what to do, he does know the voice. When Eli recognizes that Samuel is his replacement and that he can get ready to go, he jumps on it. 3 different distinctive times. He hears that message. And then when he says to him that last time, he does something very powerful. And this is my last 3 minutes before I wrap up. He says to him, he says, when you hear that voice again, verse 9, he said, go lie down, and it shall be when he calls you, you shall say, speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. All right? Speak, for thy servant heareth. And so Samuel goes and lays down. So he tells him, he gives him great instruction. This is how you handle a message of that magnitude. He does not give him poor instructions or bad instructions, as some will oftentimes do. Running to the wrong person with the right word will have them give you the wrong message on purpose, because they want to destroy and take away from your destiny, from your momentum, from your say that. I don't want you to sit there and be quiet and not speak, but it needs to be engaging, a conversation. This is a relationship. This is not just you hear or you listen, but there are some distinctive things that he'll need to hear you say that you need to say. So he says, go back first and tell him, speak, Lord, for thy servant, watch this, heareth. All right, he says, speak, Lord. So he's telling him, speak, Lord, for your servant. He talks to him about the necessity of letting him know, I'm here to serve. I'm here to lead you, tell you what to do, because if you start walking in with that mentality or with that appetite, inevitably you'll become like what failed before you. He tells him, speak, talk about service. Tell him that you're here to serve, right? Service, you're talking to him about what you're willing to do and that you're willing to serve, not to be served, but talk about service. And so many times, right about now, you have everyone wanting to be served, and you don't hear anything about service. You don't even hear the word service. It's a cuss word. It's a bad word. He said, tell them, speak, because I'm hearing. If you're not listening or you're not hearing, it blocks off his ability to speak, because he's not talking to you if you're going to ignore him. I wouldn't talk to anybody that's ignoring me. So he says, speak, for your servant heareth thee. Then he goes down and he tells him to go back and lay down. Go right back to what you were doing. He doesn't tell him to go stand in the pulpit and tell God to test him dead. He talks to him and says, the same place he spoke to you before is the same place he's going to speak to you again. Meet him in the same place he met with you first. He initiated the conversation. That's the place he wanted to speak to you. He's not starting you up in the rafters. He's starting you right in your bed. And for those of you that I'm getting ready to leave, you are right in your bed, listening, watching, doing your hair, braiding it, riding on. And where he's starting to speak to you at, where he's talking to you from, where the conversation has initiated, sometimes what you really just need to do is go back to the basics of where he first starts speaking to you so that you can hear more of the conversation. And you're welcome. Your and you're welcome moments. Go back to what he said. And if he hasn't said anything new to you, that's because you need to go back to the very last thing he said. That means there's more meat on that bone. If you have been watching, if you've been listening, tuning in to Wake the Hell Up, what has been woken the hell up in you is the revelation that you have to get up from your bed, acknowledge that what you're hearing, you did not mishear it. It was not misrepresented. It was not misconstrued. It was not distorted. That message was a clear message. It was a sound message, an appropriate message. What I need you guys to do. I need you guys to get yourselves ready. We're coming back on Facebook Live, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want to be able to hear from you in your comments. If you're watching this, whatever you got from the message, I want you to hashtag and you're welcome on Facebook, in the comments, wherever you may be. I want to see it. For those of you that have even asked about how you can sow, if you're watching here or if you're watching even on the replay, I'm going to give you information on how you can do that as soon as I can find it, because I have it around here somewhere. And so, boom, if you're asking about information on how you can sow, you're absolutely encouraged to sow. You can we'll actually have information even on how you can download our app, how you can stay in contact with us, even how you can book us or have us to come to you. All of that information will be available. You actually be able to do all of that directly from our app online, which is hashtag and you're welcome. So if you're following, if you're just tuning in, you're just watching 9 o'clock a.m. Sunday morning, have Sunday school right in your house, right at the hairdresser, wherever you might be, we're going to meet you right there. For those of you that ask how you can sow, we're on Apple Pay, Venmo, Cash App. All of that is and you're welcome. One word, your, Y-O-U-R, your, Y-O-U-R. So it's and you're welcome. Now, if you're doing PayPal is and you are welcome at gmail.com. You can do it that way. If you want to email us or contact us, reach out to us, feedback, etc. Or if you have something that you'd like to share, when we drop our other stories out, the email, let us know, show us some love. Let us know that you're watching. 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be back. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. If you've been blessed by this message, you are welcome. And you're welcome, and you're welcome, and you're welcome, and your sister is welcome, and your brother is welcome, and your hubby, and your baby daddy, and your baby mom. All of you are welcome. You're welcome to watch this broadcast. Welcome to comment. Welcome to participate. Welcome to donate. Welcome to invest. Welcome to join us next week. And you are welcome. Don't forget it. Remember it. Looking forward to seeing you next Sunday. And throughout the course of this week, we will be back here getting ready, firing up on YouTube. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Peace, love, blessings, and you're welcome.